Cool. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Mel. I'm CPO at Apptweak, and today I wanted to share a big transition that we've been going through over the last year, where we totally reorganized our team into squads, and so kind of share the process of how we went about that and what we learned on the way. Yeah. Okay, so just a quick word about myself. So I'm today Chief Product at Apptweak, at the head of the product and the design team. So Apptweak, we have 80 people in the company. Before that, I was business developer in 2 different fast-growing tech startups in Chile. Then when I joined Apptweak 5 years ago, I started as customer success. I kind of learned product on the go, I think like most of us did. And I followed, lots of courses online, and then I got the opportunity to become product manager within Apptweak. And then from there, the team grew, and today I have 7 people in the product team and 9 in the design team. And in total, we're 80 people, and we were just 7 when I joined the company, so big change. A quick word on Apptweak. Apptweak is an app store optimization tool, so you probably don't know what that is, but it's like search engine optimization, so like SEO, but for mobile apps. And so what we do, our tool is a SaaS where app publishers can find data, insights on how visible their app is on the App Store and the Play Store, and basically make decisions to optimize their visibility based on the data that we give them. We have 1,700 customers worldwide. So we're based in Brussels, but we have offices in Tokyo, Bangalore, and San Francisco. And today we're really recognized as the ASO leader on the market. And it's been quite a journey. So as I said, I joined Apptweak 5 years ago. In 2017, we were just 7 in the team with 3 developers. We just had 1 office, little less than 500 clients, which wasn't too bad, but clients much smaller than what they are today. And an annual run rate of 550,000 euros. 5 years down the line, well, we've kind of multiplied all these numbers, most of these numbers, by 10. So we're now 80 employees, 40 people in the tech team, so half of our company is part of the tech team. We have 4 different offices, and now our annual run rate is 5.6 million. So it's been quite a journey, and that's what I really liked about my experience in Apptweak, is that every year is extremely different. And as product, we're the ones that make sure that all the processes run out smoothly. Well, it's been really a thing of every year readapting, rechanging the processes to make sure that they fit the size that we are and the team that we are. So that's been like a constant real evaluation that I've been working on at Apptweak. And something big happened last year, which pushed this even further. We raised $22 million in April 2021. And so that really forced us to take a step back and look at how are we working today within the tech team, and what changes can we make to make sure that we prepare for this big growth. Because obviously when investors put $22 million in your company, they kind of expect results, big results. So we had a big, ambitious plan. We actually do now have a big, ambitious plan to deliver on. And we wanted to make sure that the team that we have and the way the team is organized is ready to scale and really prepared for that growth. And so that's what I wanted to talk today, is how do you prepare a tech team for high growth? Before I dig in, quick rewind as to where we were 1 year ago when we started to make that decision and how we were organized. This might look quite old school for some of you, but this is how we were working at the time 1 year ago. So we had the product team that would kind of come with product requirements, user stories based on all the feedback that we got, all the user research that we did. We would define those user stories and requirements. We would explain them to the designer. From there, the designer would do wireframes. We'd iterate, obviously, with them. We would kind of very quickly validate with the devs that this is feasible. And then once it's ready, we would come to the backend team and front-end team and be like, okay, this is what we want to see in the product. Please do it. And so the backend team would start working on it. And once they'd finished doing all the APIs, all that set up, front-end would move on to the project. They would make a really nice user interface. It would go into staging. We would test it. And then it would be pushed into production, and the feature is released. So that's how we were working. At the time, again, when I joined, we were just 7 in the whole company. So there wasn't even 1 person per team here, right? And then little by little, well, we had 1 person for each team, and then it became 2 person per team, and so on. And so at the end, we started being 3 or 4 per team, and we started being like this big tech team of 20 people, all working together on the product. And that's where we started to realize, like, this isn't working. We were really reaching the limits of that system. But I do want to say that this system really helped us grow fast during the first 3 years. So it's not something to totally blame. But at one point, your team becomes too big, and it's just impossible to have everyone working all together on just one big product. And so that's where we were 1 year ago, where we just raised 22 million. We had tons of new products to create, new things to do, and we were feeling that we already had reached the limit of our current organization. I found like there was 3 big limits. The first was the cognitive load, the fact that there's a little lag here, so I'll just wait for but the fact that since everyone was working on the product as a whole, well, everyone was expected to know kind of everything about the product. And so again, as product manager, you just needed to, when a sales or customer success came to you with a question, well, you're the product manager. You should be able to answer that. But as the product grows and becomes more complicated, well, that's a lot to know. That's a lot of things to digest. Obviously, there's always supposedly documentation somewhere you can consult, but everyone kind of expects you to know, to have the answer to their questions. And the same thing with the devs. For the developers, it was also a huge cognitive load because they're expected to work on any area of the product and really jump, when it comes to debugging, jump onto any area of the product. So again, they need to understand the code of the whole product. And since the product is becoming bigger and bigger, well, that was a massive thing to ask for. On the other side, people were quite happy about that until then because it also added a lot of variety to their job because they would work on a specific feature or specific area of the tool that they would improve, and then 4 weeks after that, they would jump onto a totally different area, and that added a lot of variety, and that's something that they liked as well. So not everything is bad. The second big limit was that obviously as team grows, interactions and communication become more and more complex. And so typically the thing of, someone asks a question to the team, the product team, or the product and tech team, and it's like, then starts exactly like Consuelo was saying, that chain of slacks and pings and who has the answer to this question, right? And the bigger your team, the bigger you're kind of searching through Slack, who is going to answer that question? A lot of ping pong going on, and that creates a lot of inefficient communication. We also ended up having massive retros because we work by Scrum, and so, okay, let's do a retro at the end of each sprint, and we were like 20 people at the same retro. And obviously, when you're 20, people don't share their honest feedback so easily. And so again, many things stay unsaid, and meetings just drag on forever. And it became a little bit painful to do those retros. So that's where we were seeing like limit number 2 is as the team grows, well, communication becomes more and more inefficient. And finally, we were really falling back into a waterfall process where I kind of exaggerated on the first slide, but it was really, at the end, it really felt like that there was a lot of handovers from one team to another. And each time you hand over something, there's a lot of miscommunication, there's a lot of misunderstandings, there's a lot of friction going on, a lot of ping pong. I thought this was ready, but it wasn't. Or where do I fetch this info? How come the API isn't like this? And so a lot of back and forth, and again, that created a lot of inefficiencies and really slowed down our development velocity. And it also forced us to be more and more top-down, and so as product managers, we would be, okay, this is what we want to build. We would kind of check with the dev team, and so we would just go to the head of back or head of front. He would quickly go through it and say, okay, yeah, that looks okay. And then it came into the actual developer who would actually carry out the project, and obviously it wasn't that okay. And so we felt that, okay, we were really falling back into this very top-down system, and that created a lot of frustrations within the team as well. So, okay, we had all these problems, and we have $20 million that we need to deliver on. So we're like, okay, we need to do something to make sure that we change this and that our new organization really supports and sets the nice basis to scale and prepare for growth. So how did we go about that? Well, first of all, we got together with our CTO, with the head of front, back, data science, and the head of design. We got together to kind of think of, okay, how can we improve this organization and prepare for scaling. We obviously looked at what was already out there in the industry. So you probably all have heard of the Amazon and the squad system of Spotify. So the power of small teams. So if a team can't be fed with 2 pizzas, then the team is too big. But we were 20. You don't feed 20 people with 2 pizzas. So we were probably too big. And the squad, well, there's a lot of literature on the squad. Spotify has written a lot on that, of, the power of cross-functional teams, 5 to 7 people that are self-organizing. And the idea is to make them feel again like a mini startup and bring back their, that feeling that they have the power to do things and they're totally autonomous to do that. So that's what we were aiming for. We also read, I wanted to put that there because it's just a really good book called Team Topologies. It's kind of a technical book, but very interesting. It really helped us to have a clear vision of how we could structure the team in the future. So I would really recommend, if you're going through the same process, to read that book. It had a lot of very concrete recommendations that we could apply. And then 2 major principles that I like a lot. There's done by as number, which basically says that as human beings, we can't have more than a certain number of people that we trust and that we communicate efficiently with. And so the bigger your team, the more difficult it's going to be for you to build trust with each member of that team. And so, again, small teams really, really foster efficient communication. And the smaller your team, well, the easier it's going to be to have trust in your teammates. And that's trust, again, as Consuelo said, building on trust is really important. And if you have trust and autonomy, then you can do great things with that. But if you don't have that, if you're working with 15 other people that you don't even know how they work, it's going to be very hard to innovate and do something big. The other principle I really like is Conway's Law. And this one says that the structure of a software will mirror the structure of the organization that built it. And so we were really like this. We had a very large team collocated of, there's some products, some designers, some front-end, back-end, but we were all working together on the product, which was a big monolithic architecture. So that meant also that if we wanted to move into small teams, small distributed teams, well, we also had to change significantly the code and the architecture behind it to support that organization. So it's not just about changing, the team. We also had to change the whole architecture that was behind it. So it was quite a big transition. And I like the what's written down there, that the cognitive load, the team's cognitive load, is what sets the limit to the size of your product. And so the size of the software that they can handle. And that's really true, and we were really feeling that. We were feeling that, okay, with this organization, we had reached that limit of the cognitive load we could handle, so there's no way we could grow this product more if we were to keep that same organization. So we really needed to move into something like this if we wanted to start scaling and growing and adding more growth. So we had 4 goals with this new vision that we had of, okay, let's move into squads. One was obviously to give more focus, so to really cut down on the cognitive load and split it across the different squads. The other objective was to allow each squad member to go have a much deeper understanding of the product area that they are managing, that they are in charge of. Give more ownership, so to really move away from that top-down model that we were using and really allow each developer, each designer, each product manager to fully own the product roadmap of the product area that they've been given, and to decide what's the scope of the projects they want to work on, what are the priorities, and they would be the owner of the things that they're going to be working on. Give more autonomy. So that's the power, obviously, of cross-functional teams, is that we wanted to make sure that these teams had all the resources they needed internally to carry out projects from idea to full delivery, and make sure that they didn't depend on any external resources so that they can really move at their own pace. And finally, and obviously that's the overarching goal, was to prepare for growth and to make sure that this new organization could really support Apptweak in the upcoming years of scaling and growing into a scale-up, because we were very much in more of a startup mode up until then. So how did we go about this transition? Well, obviously, there's a series of very practical aspects that you need to consider. So the first thing was, and this is obviously all this brainstorm that we were doing with the head of back, head of front, CTO, how many squads do we create? How many people do we put in each squad? What is going to be a squad like? What is going to be the scope and the mission of each squad? What are the general guidelines that we're going to give? What are the processes that we're going to impose on the squads so that we kind of keep a minimum of homogeneity across the squads? And what are the processes that we're going to leave the squads totally to define by themselves? And obviously, who goes where? Because then you have all these people, and then you suddenly need to do that puzzle of, okay, who is going in which squad, and does that make a nice mix, and so on. So a lot of practical aspects you need to consider, but really, most importantly, are the human aspects. And that's something that we realized quite early, is that we were suddenly telling all our team that we're going to totally change the way we work. We're going to totally change their team, and it's going to have a big impact on their day-to-day, right? So that was kind of huge to announce that to the team. And so we realized that if we wanted this to work out, we really need to consider more the human aspects of this transition and make sure that we build buy-in from the team and that they feel implicated and that they also feel excited about this change and as excited as we do to make this change. And that was really the key to success, is to make sure that, okay, each employee feels comfortable with this change. And so that's really what I want to focus on today, is how to make this transition a little more human and not just, okay, a mathematical problem that you're solving of going from a monolithic architecture into little smaller teams. Little lag, but something that we realized quite early on in Apptweak is that, as I explained, we were, until then, organized by teams. So team identity was really, really strong. People really identified with other people on their team, with people who have the same field of expertise. And so those are the people that they work with on a daily basis. Those are the people that they trust. And we were coming in and saying, you know what, scrap the teams, we're going to work in squads. Wow, that was very scary. And so very quickly we were like, okay, we can't just go by the book, because the books that we read and the resources we read, they really focus on squads. So we kind of have to reinvent something that would work for Apptweak, that could basically get the best of both worlds of having both the squads and the teams. And so we have this little matrix where each individual in Apptweak, in the tech team at least, belongs to a squad. And within the squad, they are responsible of a certain area of the product, and they are in charge of defining that area, that product's roadmap, the priorities, and so on. But each individual is also part of a functional team. So as a product manager, you're also part of the product team. As a front-end developer, you're also part of the front-end team. And that is extremely important, because at the team layer, that's where people exchange on good practices that they've been doing, that they exchange on challenges that they've seen, or that they exchange, okay, I'm implementing this new component. Oh, that's great, because I also need that kind of component in my squad. And so keeping the team was extremely important, because we realized that the team would really be the glue across the squads. And the team really has, first of all, it brings alignment. So it makes sure that at the team level, well, front ends or products, we exchange on what we're working on a regular basis, and that keeps the information flowing across the squads, and it really avoids having the squads working in silos. And on the other hand, there's a series of decisions of, obviously in the tech world, things move very fast. You need to really be at the cutting edge of technology, and those kind of decisions, they're brought with the team. So the front-end team decides to bring in a new technology. Well, that's a decision that you can take at the team level. And then each front end can then implement it into his squad. And exactly the same with the design system, for instance. Well, that's typically something that the design team thinks together. We have a dedicated team for design system, but they interact a lot with the design team. And then the designers, they are the ones that advocate the design system within each of the squads. And that keeps consistency across the tool, but also really encourages continuous learning and pushing people to keep being at the edge of their expertise and career development and so on. So that was something that very quickly realized was really important, that we couldn't go against that team force and that team identity. We had to include it into this new organization, and actually today the teams really help the whole squad organization work smoothly. The other big thing was really about, there we go. The other big thing that we realized was very important is to over-communicate. So what we did is from day one, when we knew that we were going forward with this transition, to tell everyone. And so this was in April. We announced to the whole team that, okay, we're going to be reorganizing into squads. We explained our reasons for this decision, and we gave a very clear timeline that this would be implemented in September, and that by September we should have this new squad organization in place. And so giving a timeline was very important because it just made it real, and people realized that, okay, we were committed to this, and this was going to happen. And then everyone started to freak out, obviously. And so that's when, okay, at that point, what we did is, okay, we made sure we listened to everyone. So obviously we did one-on-ones, we did lots of different feedback sessions to make sure that everyone could express all the concerns they were having, all the questions they were having, and we had tons of questions coming up. But that's great. We made sure that we were open to that we listened, and we gathered everything in this huge mind map where we basically mapped out all these questions. We grouped them by topic, and then that's when we got to work. And we used this really as the basis of all the brainstorm sessions and workshops we were having together further down the line. So again, we got together with the head of back, head of front, head of design, data science, and our CTO, and we did like lots of different workshops to brainstorm on, okay, how is this new organization going to work, and how do we address all these concerns and all these questions, and how do we answer all these questions? Because sometimes people were asking questions that we hadn't even thought of. Oh yeah, you're right, how is that going to work with the new squad organization? And so that really helped, having that big mind map, to make sure that we didn't forget anything and that we made sure that we took everything into consideration. What we also did is very quickly we included key employees and invited them to the table as well. And that was extremely helpful for two things. First of all, well, these employees, they had previous work experience. They've worked in other organizations with other structures, and so they really brought very valuable insights to the table as well and really helped us get that brainstorm going. And secondly, well, just the fact that you've invited someone to the table, you've involved them in the process, well, they feel implicated, they feel involved, and they became real advocates for this transition. And that was very important because these are people that have influence in the company and that could also advocate this transition to other employees that were probably having questions or concerns that maybe they didn't want to voice to the head of front, but they were more comfortable voicing to another peer employee. And so that was very useful as well to include key people in this process. And then once we kind of had a clear vision of, okay, this is how this new organization is going to look like, these are the squads that we're going to create, this is the mission of each squad, these are the processes that we think we should follow, we started writing all that in a document, Google Slides, so we didn't go search very far for very creative material, but we put that in very basic slides, and we explained everything. We made sure that all the questions that people had raised, well, they were there in the FAQ, and we shared that document with everyone. So we made it very transparent. Everyone had access to the Google Slides and could just go through the slides at any time because people take time to digest the information, and the idea was that, okay, rather than just, well, we obviously did present it to the teams, but we also gave them access to the document so they could read it at their home or when they had more time or more mental space to take in that information. So once that was out there, well, obviously, again, we did another round of feedback gathering. So we asked for feedback again and again and again. And something that we tried to be conscious about is that people don't feel comfortable sharing feedback in the same way as others. And so not everyone feels safe in the same environment. And so what we made sure is to create space for people to voice concerns in different ways. So we had individual one-on-ones with their manager. We had team meetings where they were by team with their manager or by team with a CTO and myself, where they could ask questions as well, because sometimes with the team dynamic, that kind of gives you the confidence to voice your concern if you feel that others are supporting you. And then we also did, at one point we did a casual after-work Q&A where we got some beers and some chips, and we were just there to answer any questions that people had. And that was actually very useful, because sometimes people don't dare to voice a concern in a very formal meeting, because it sounds like they're making this really big deal out of it. But if you're around a beer, it's much more casual, it's much more informal, and actually during that after work, we learned, again, a lot of small little things that people were worried about and that we could very quickly address and reassure them with, and that was also very helpful to just have this more casual setting where people felt safer and could express some concerns that they hadn't voiced before. And finally, obviously, adapt and keep communicating. So, if you're asking for feedback on this Google slide document, and you're changing it, you have to adapt it. You have to make sure that you take the new feedback in. So, very iterative process, and make sure that you communicate on the changes that you're making, so people feel that they're being heard, they've been listened to, and they feel reassured. And then, most importantly, is give time. So, this was in April. And we were launching this new organization in September. So that gave people 4 to 5 months to totally digest the information. And I really think that the time aspect is really helped us get people on board with the whole transition, because obviously at first people were freaking out. We had lots of questions like, and now I'm going to be stuck in this product area, and I'm going to be stuck with the same team. That sounds so boring. Or how long do I have to stay in the squad? And so people got really panicked, and that's totally understandable, because this was a huge change that we were bringing on the table. But after 2 or 3 months, when we listened to their concerns, we talked about it, we also shared the vision of, okay, but with the new organization, this is the problem, these are all the problems that we think this new organization is going to solve. People started to gradually actually get excited about it. And then in August, we even had people complaining of how we were currently working, and I can't wait to be in the squads because I won't have all these issues that we have now. It's so annoying, and that was really powerful. And that switch, you can't have that in 3 weeks. You need to give time for people to digest and really process that information. You can't ask them to do that switch of mind in 3 weeks. So giving them that time and really planning ahead and spreading it over 4 to 5 months really helped us get the team on board with this change. And finally, and definitely not least important, is to make it fun. And we were lucky enough to actually basically match this transition with the yearly company event, which was in September. Actually, no. What we did is we wanted to make it fun, so we would say, okay, we're going to launch this in September. So in September, we're going to do 2 days of cool workshops in the office, and then the company actually decided to let's make it even bigger. Let's do the company-wide event for across 3 days. We go outside of the office. We went to the Ardennes. It was really nice, and it was also after COVID, so first big event after COVID, which also made it hyper fun. And so we took really 3 days where we were with the whole company. And during those 3 days, we obviously talked about the vision and about, okay, this big growth phase that we're entering. And then obviously that opened us space to have workshops on the new organization and make it fun and get people really excited about this new launch. Because after that event, we were going to start and launch the squads. So that really helped also, get excitement around this launch. Okay. So we launched in September, and we're now 9 months later. And so taking a step back to kind of reflect on how that change went, if we look at the 4 goals that we had set ourselves, pretty good. So give more focus, yes, we definitely feel that the cognitive load is split, and that it's split across squads. And we feel that the squads are also actually, they know much more than I do now on their product area, so very impressive. Give more ownership, definitely. They've really taken on their roadmap, they're defining their roadmap, and what's really exciting is that since they're not jumping around projects as they were before, they're really carrying out the projects much more thoroughly, and the quality has significantly increased. The quality of what we release has significantly increased. There's a lot more follow-up as well. So it's pretty impressive, the work that they've been doing. More autonomy. Again, they're quite autonomous, and what's really nice is that well, they test new ways of doing, they innovate on the product, but they also innovate on the processes. So previously we were all working in Scrum, now some work on Kanban, some work with Scrum. We have ways of doing debugs, some are kind of changing the ways of doing debugs. So each squad is really adapting and doing things in a way that works best for them. And finally, yeah, we're definitely seeing a real acceleration in terms of development velocity. So definitely we feel that it's a structure that really matches the growth ambitions that we have. So very impressive to see that, okay, when you empower people, when you give them that trust, that autonomy, it's amazing what they can do with it. And so that's very, very positive. But there's always a but to the story. There are still new challenges that we've seen, and in the aftermath, there are things that, okay, we didn't anticipate, obviously, and that we're kind of working on now. So obviously, this is an ongoing process. It's never finished. But one thing that was actually quite funny is that we've worked so much on making this work, on making sure that everyone was excited about it, felt comfortable about it, that it worked out, that when we launched, we kind of forgot to say, okay, but what about the head of? What do we do now? Because we've given like so much responsibility, so much ownership, autonomy to the squads. What's our role? Like, I remember like the first 2 weeks after we launched the squads, I was like, what am I supposed to do? Because I'm not supposed to do all this thing anymore. These are the product managers that now are really taking on this. Because the idea was to really move away from this whole top-down thing. And so that was quite an adaptation that we had to make as head of, and we had invested so much time, preparing this change for everyone that we kind of forgot to redefine our role and see how we would fit in this new picture. So that was quite interesting. We had to really adapt and redefine our own roles. Also, because it's a very flat organization, what we're feeling now is that it kind of lacks of, okay, compelling career opportunities. Like, what, I'm going to be a front-end developer for my squad for what, 2 years, 3 years? That's not very exciting. And so what we're working on now is a skill framework or career framework to make sure that we keep people motivated and excited about the possibilities that they have within Apptweak, and make sure that they feel that they can grow within that organization and really have their personal development within this new organization. And so, yeah, that's something that we're working on right now. So that's a big work in progress. And finally, another challenge, well, obviously there's always those projects that don't fall into a squad. And so these are typically the projects that even before, no one was very happy to take on, but now even less. And so it's always hard to find the resources for projects that are cross-squad. It also made us create new squads. So we have, for instance, a design system squad of 2 designers full-time working on our design system, and they work very closely with the designer of each squad. We also have an architecture and infrastructure squad. That's also something that we had to create it down the line to have people really focused on architecture and infrastructure, because that's something that you can't do, as a squad. It's too split. You need someone to really focus on that for the whole team. And then there's always those projects that don't fit really into a squad, and it's always hard to find someone who will take full ownership for that project and take the lead on that project. And so that's still something that we're figuring out here in the aftermath of this new organization. So yeah, key learnings, key takeaways from this journey. One is that it's extremely important to take the human relations and the human aspect into account. Never forget to communicate, and don't hesitate to over-communicate from the beginning. There's no such thing as over-communication. Give space to raise concern in different formats, because we don't all feel safe in the same way, in the same environment. Make people feel involved. The earlier you involve them in the process, the earlier you'll get buy-in, and also they will bring amazing insights, and they will make the end result so much better than if you hadn't involved them in the process. Plan time, again, I really insist on that. Having those 4 or 5 months for people to digest really helped us. So plan time to allow others to process. This is something that you've been thinking on for months, that you need to give them that same length of time to also digest that information. And make it fun. It's always better when it's fun. And finally, obviously it's an ongoing progress. It's like a process. So it's always work in progress, and you won't get it right the first time. So you need to be open to change and to adapt on the way as well. So I also have my team that's here over there. Feel free to reach out to them if you want to kind of have their views on how this worked out. Maybe they will say very different things. But yeah, feel free to reach out and talk to them to see how they kind of lived through this change. And yeah, thanks a lot for your attention. We are also hiring, so we're actually looking for product operations to help our product teams thrive. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me if that's something you're interested in. And yeah, happy to take any of your questions.